Welcome to the show. My guest today is Daryl Roberts, the Program Executive Officer of the Defense Logistics Agency. Daryl, welcome to this discussion.
Thanks for having me, Jason.
Today, we're going to continue the conversation about IT modernization and how agencies can adapt, adjust, and thrive today and in the future. In the first Modernizing Government show, we heard from the Air Force and what their path toward IT modernization looks like. Today, we're talking about how agencies can speed up delivery of new capabilities through the use of low-code or no-code platforms. This was the buzz about a year or two ago, and now it's part of the DevSecOps and Agile discussion more broadly. What does it take to combine DevSecOps with low-code or no-code platforms in order to deliver services to citizens and customers faster? Well, that's what my guest is going to tell us. Daryl Roberts is the Program Executive Officer for the Defense Logistics Agency. Daryl, let me just start at the beginning. Let's discuss DLA's application modernization strategy. I know you all issued a request for information in March 2019, seems like so long ago now, for an enterprise application as a service. What came of that RFI, and how does that play into that broader application modernization strategy?
Well, again, thanks for having me, Jason, and happy to share our DLA modernization journey with everyone. The RFI was in March 2019 was actually our first attempt to just gauge from an industry perspective the ability for them to support our migration to software as a service. From a government perspective, we really want to reduce the amount of infrastructure that we're sustaining and leverage as much commercially viable products as we can. And so we did that RFI in March 2019. I'm happy to announce in September of this year, we actually awarded our ERP migration contract, and that's going to be migrating to AWS as part of the SAP NS2 platform. Our ERP is a SAP-based product, and so we're following a similar path that the Army and Navy are following in terms of moving to their S/4HANA platform to get the cloud first, and then eventually look at how we standardize our operations to use software as a service.
Now, someone hears this and says, okay, that's an ERP. That's the biggest lift that you'll have. And we've heard the horror stories about ERP platforms, setting them up, getting them going. Walk me through, is ERP a piece to the bigger puzzle, or is that where a big majority of your applications exist?
It's a piece of the bigger puzzle. Of course, it's a huge piece of the puzzle. It's where all of our financial operations, and we have what we call the integrated ERP here at DLA. So across our business supply chain and our operations, we have an integrated ERP that takes our finance, our supply chain delivery, as well as our auditability into account. And so it's a big piece, but we also have applications that service our internal DLA customers from an IT perspective, as well as DoD customers. And so we have approximately 194 applications at DLA in total that are part of this modernization effort. One of the other major efforts we have is called the Warehouse Modernization System, WMS effort. That's also migrating our distribution piece to SAP standard software, and it's going to combine our EBS ERP, where our financial and other integrated business, with our warehouse modernization efforts, so that we have one ERP instance as we rationalize and create a platform for our customers.
And all of this is going to be obviously in the cloud. It's a SaaS, as you said, software as a service. And the goal here is to make life easier, but also understand what you have, modernize those applications. Walk me through some of that longer term strategy pieces.
Yeah, so when we talk modernization, I think people have the misnomer of it means just upgrade your application, right? When we talk about modernization for DLA, it's really talking about how do we do business better, more efficiently, and cost effective for the customer and the warfighter. At the end of the day, as a combat logistics support agency for the nation, it's all about support to the warfighter. And it's also supporting whole of government. DLA's mission also includes responses to national pandemics, our COVID response to hurricanes, things of that nature. So we want to ensure that we keep that mission and do it as efficiently as possible. And so we have to ensure that we have the correct governance going into that, moving ahead.
A piece of this effort, I'm sure, is this idea of using what, I'll call it a buzzword early on that I think people have moved forward on, which is low code, no code platforms. Walk me through how that is playing a role in this modernization effort.
So we recently awarded a contract to ServiceNow They have a platform of many services and software. It's software as a service. And part of that award was getting us a low code, no code solution that we can leverage within our agency. Of course, for us, our investment in the ERP, we want to ensure that we're using that COTS capability to the maximum extent possible. But we're leveraging the ServiceNow platform to get productivity efficiencies for our workforce, as well as move some of the ability to bring technical solutions to the employee themselves. So we call them citizen technologists here in DLA, digital citizens. And it's how do we provide these low code, easy to enable platforms to the customer. So we're developing that concept here in DLA of how we create citizen technologists so that as a logistician with a little bit of training, you're actually able to create some low code acquisition or workflow products yourself while we maintain oversight from a cybersecurity and sustainment perspective. So we're using low code and the ServiceNow platform as a baseline. Like I stated, we have 194 applications. And so as a DLA employee, there's the possibility of having to log in 194 separate times throughout your workday. This ServiceNow platform is creating a single platform where you log in once, you have similar capabilities like your iPhone or your Samsung. You can have all these applications, but you configure your phone the way that you use it on a day-to-day basis. We're using a similar concept in creating this platform for the users at DLA.
What does it take to move into a low code, no code platform? It's not just, okay, let's hook it up to ServiceNow and go. I mean, is there
Right.
a back end on the DLA side that you have to start worrying about? And, you know, I don't know if you want to go down the path of architecture and infrastructure, or is it just the training side, as you said, for some of the logisticians who just a little bit of training can now create? Walk me through maybe a little bit of both.
Yeah, our modernization effort starts with architecture. Um, a lot of folks in IT, we like to say garbage in, garbage out. If you have the wrong architecture, you've modernized, but you're not getting good data or get use out of the IT that you're invested in. So we're starting with our architecture and looking at what's the type of data we collect at DLA, what's the key data that we measure in terms of performance efficiencies, in terms of our support to the nation. And so we have to get our architecture in a good place. And then we look at the products, the services like low code, no code platforms, et cetera, and put that on top of it. As we do that, we've baked cybersecurity into how we do it within DLA. You mentioned some DevSecOps models and things of that nature. It's all part of the modernization journey to where you're using software as a service, low code, no code. But as you use low code, no code, you want to do it within a DevSecOps model so that cybersecurity is thought of through the development, testing, as well as deployment phases. For us within DLA, with the number of applications we have, setting up this DevSecOps factory allows us to really more efficiently control our costs. When you have a bunch of system integrators coming into your agency, they all have their own flavor of tools they like to use. And so what we've done is looked across our inventory and decided upon, hey, these are the tools necessary for us as DLA to support. And now instead of paying these vendors to bring in their own solutions, we're managing that ourselves within this software factory.
I've got to ask, does that come from a good old lesson learned where maybe at one point in time, DLA may have let people bring their own forks and knives to the table and you said, no more,
Absolutely.
everyone going to eat out of this forks and knives drawer?
Absolutely. You know, it's potlucks are good in some occasions, but not when you're talking about IT development. It gets a lot more costly and it's hard to sustain, right? You want to set a standard and you want to be able to have repeatable processes, particularly when you have a mission as large as DLA. And so we believe this helps reduce our footprint in terms of being vulnerable to cybersecurity vulnerabilities. It's going to be contained within a government cloud environment. Right now, we're building it out in Azure for Microsoft. And so this allows us to reduce our cyber vulnerability by creating this environment as opposed to, hey, I hope this vendor is doing the right things within their um, space, which makes DLA vulnerable.
And in many ways, as I think, as you said from earlier on, serving the warfighter, meeting that mission, becoming more efficient, those are really the outcomes you're looking for, not, hey, are we in the cloud or not in the cloud? It's what are we doing that's better, more efficient, and can serve those citizens and customers better. The other piece to this is the you said 194 applications. How do you prioritize which ones? Is it based on customer needs? Is it based on which ones are the oldest, most insecure, if you will? Walk me through that process.
So we really start with the business. What from a business impact perspective, which are our most critical systems within DLA in order to support our mission? That's number one. And then we analyze those systems to say, hey, are we on a good lifecycle management path? Are there things that we need to modernize? And so based upon criticality of the mission, that's how we set the priorities of, okay, let's look at these in terms of a rationalization effort. And then the customer impacts. If it's fragile, and it has external customers as well as internal DLA use, that's something we want to move up the priority list so that we reduce the vulnerability for our partners as well. So we have a very robust governance process that we've started. It includes all the senior executive leadership throughout DLA, because what we've also found in my own personal history as well as agency, when you have change of this magnitude, it has to be leadership driven. Um, and if the leadership is committed to the change, then you're able to convince the workforce that it's an important change as well. So we're really leaning upon governance, a partnership with our functional community, and we're not really labeling this as just an IT modernization, but this is an agency modernization based on reviewing our business processes as well as other aspects of the business in DLA. I think DLA as well as other agencies, what people have begun to realize, IT is not a nice to have anymore. It's actually the business. It's part of the business. No one can conduct business without IT. And so we're really trying to change the culture and make sure we're looking at this from a life cycle management perspective as opposed to a legacy system discussion and a modernization discussion. But you have to get there through modernization in order to have something sustainable. And that's kind of where we are in the journey is we're modernizing so that we can now manage the life cycle.
You mentioned the governance process a couple of times. Let's walk down that path for a second. Where is the user in that process? You mentioned the leadership, which is good, but usually
Correct.
leadership, I'll just call it like it is. You don't want to ask you to comment, have trouble spelling IT sometimes. So walk me through a little bit about where the user fits in, and then how do you bring the top and the bottom together?
Right. So you have to start with the sponsorship, right? So when you talk about modernization and change, you have to have that senior level culture sponsorship. And that's where we started with DLA and established that governance to where if the leadership is tracking and looking for change and updates, that leads the workforce. To your point of the user, that's the point of where we are now, where we have integrated the user throughout this process. We have working level teams, we call them integrated process teams, IPTs, that include well over 800 plus employees across the agency through each of our supply chains to help work through how to actually ensure the business process reengineering is addressed. Are we challenging regulations, laws, things of that nature that allow us to take advantage of our IT investments and change that policy or law as opposed to changing the software to fit it. So we're involving the user from day one, and we're doing that through an agile process. Waterfall is not something that has been very productive for the federal government in the past. And so we are committed to an agile process, including the user, including leadership, including our partners on the commercial side. We really believe this is a across the board partnership when you talk about modernization. It's not just us in the government changing how we think and how we do, but industry has a responsibility to do the same. And so we've formed that partnership at each level to have that dialogue because communication is going to be key at all levels.
Daryl, there's plenty more to talk to, but we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll delve into that agile process and involving the user. You're listening to the discussion, Modernizing Government, Cleaning Out Your Application Closet, sponsored by KPMG on Federal News Network.